And now we're recording. Welcome to Virtual Radio Hour with URI Master Gardeners. This is our September 2021 edition. We've been going on for a minute. We took a hiatus in August, but we are back to you on Tuesday every month, 7 to 8 p.m. We're gonna keep it shaking up. It's not the first Tuesday, it's not the third Tuesday. It's a different Tuesday every week coming at you. Just a quick background that the URI Master Gardener program is a program of cooperative extension at University of Rhode Island. Our mission is to educate citizens on environmentally sound horticultural practices through the dissemination of factual, research-based information. And we're excited to be doing some work on really expanding the meaning of what factual and research-based really means, and trying to kind of honor all knowledges that come into the gardening space. So thank you so much for joining us. I do want to highlight that we are recording each of our radio hour episodes. So we have June and July actually up on the Master Gardener Radio Hour website. And so we're sharing the video and the audio recording of each. And so the audio recording is in response to feedback we've gotten that, wow, this would be great as a podcast to listen to while I'm gardening. Well, now you can listen to it as a kind of podcast while you're gardening. So it's hosted on SoundCloud, so you can pull that up, on your phone, or you can also download the MP3 file, to your iTunes library, what have you. So that's available to the public, and we'd love for you to catch up on some past radio hours. And then our next radio hour, and this is news to our panelists, exciting announcement, is going to be on Tuesday, October 12th, from
or
7
is it?
to 8 p.m. Or is it? It is. And as always, between now and then, if you have questions, you can always contact the URI Gardening and Environmental Hotline. We have a phone number staffed 5 days a week, as well as an email address. And I'll post all that information in the chat as well. And how this event is going to go, if you haven't been to past radio hours, is we're going to start with some brief updates. I'm going to pass things off to our host and MC of this evening, Master Gardener Richard Souls. And then we're going to start off with today with some kind of general questions really focused on fall in the garden and where we've been and where we're going. And then we'll get into some audience pre-submitted questions. And throughout this whole event, whether you're on Facebook or in WebEx, invite you to use the comment section or the chat to share your questions live. And I'll be behind the scenes, getting those to our panelists and making sure we can answer as many questions as possible. So I'm going to pass it off to Richard. And Richard is a Master Gardener from the class of 2015. And as part of our program, Richard is an extraordinary leader and invaluable part of our team. In addition to hosting Radio Hour, he also is a coordinator of some of Master Gardener education services, including public presentations, Radio Hour, and educational kiosks. His areas of expertise include container gardening, vegetable gardening, emphasis on pests, native plants, and permaculture. And he lives in Johnston. That sounds like a 5-year plan is maybe moving beyond Johnston. So Richard, I'm going to hand it off to you. Thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you, Francesca, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you for everybody for being here. Thank you, panelists. As Francesca started to mention, the virtual radio hour is just one of our many public educational services. We also offer a hotline that is free and available to the public. And I believe that information will be pasted into the chat so that you can access that email or call anytime. It's only open certain hours, so preferably email. And when you email, if you do, you can always attach photos as well, which makes it much easier for diagnosis. We now have an Instagram account, and you can follow the Master Gardeners on Instagram at URI Master Gardeners. Again, that link will also be pasted into the chat. Thank you, Francesca. And before we get to our questions, we wanted to ask our panelists what's going on with their gardens. We started to talk about this before we went live and started recording, but if we can get back to it, everybody, how was your harvest, and what are you doing with your harvest? Any seed saving, fall planting? Tom, I know you're doing. I'm sorry, go ahead, Laura, please.
No, I was going to say, no, all of the above. I've got a bunch of autumn olives in the refrigerator ready to be made into jam and fruit leather sometime in the next day or two. Better I have them than the birds. And I've got, I had a small grape harvest, as I was saying. Henri took most of it, so that had some jam as well. Seed saving is going along as it shows itself. I've got a whole bunch of milkweed pods sitting in my sunroom, getting ready to pop and defluff. So that is, in terms of the harvest, that's all going well. Tomatoes, of course, and lots of tomato sauce. And that's what's going on. That's what's going on in my garden. You guys?
Well, there are still some things producing. I'm still getting green beans every day. Peppers are loaded. Had some failures. I've had a lot of issues with insects this year, and a little bit of four-legged varmints, which I think Richard was talking about too. I know Roger about the bunnies. I've had a groundhog and some bunnies, but certain things have been great. We have a great onion crop, a good garlic crop, great potato crop. Certain things that the animals don't like to eat, they're doing fine. And they'll keep producing. Where I am in Narragansett near the water, I don't expect a frost until mid-November. So there's still food coming up.
That's great. Hey,
I'm not too far from where Tom's garden is, just a couple of miles. And really, the microclimate that we have down here, it's pretty interesting. I did just pick more tomatoes, so now I'm gonna have to make more sauce. The pepper plants, they've been spent. Some carrots are starting to push their way up. Still have to wait until, I think I'll wait until October, end of October, early November before I get my garlic in this season. And had the most magnificent sunflower this year. Planted it on purpose, and not all of them made it, but these two guys, one just based on the fact that I cannot even get anywhere near the rim of a basketball net. This thing was above that. So this had to be a 10, 12 foot sunflower.
Nice.
Huge head. It was absolutely magnificent. I did notice Francesca sent all of us some questions previous from people that submitted questions. And I'd like to address this woman because Laura, you had mentioned something about this. She states she has lots of native flowering plants growing back in her yard, and she was hoping to attract more pollinators to the garden. And she only has one monarch butterfly and a few bees. And when Laura said her milkweed, I'm going to be checking my milkweed tomorrow too, because the pods are there. The milkweed beetles, not the beetles, but the little orange bugs around there, just ready to pop them open. So I'm going to have a good harvest of pods. So if this woman wants to contact one of us, we're going to have many milkweed pods available. But I had a really good year for the monarchs. They were also attracted to some giant zinnias that I had growing. So between the milkweed and the zinnias, we kept the monarchs busy up in my neighborhood.
Do you have any caterpillars on your milkweeds?
No, I'm waiting to. I did see. I can't think of the name of it. A black and red beetle. The black and red. It definitely had a pattern to it. I can't recall.
That's the milkweed beetle.
I showed it. I took a picture of it and showed it to the hotline people, and they identified it right away. So no caterpillars though. Nope.
I've got a couple that I've been keeping an eye on. They're big. They're really big. I was worried that they were way too late, but then I did some research, and it turns out that monarchs have 4 generations.
Yep.
And the first 3 generations live about 6 weeks and die, but the 4th generation, the ones that pupate in September and October, they're the Mexican flyers. They're the ones who turn into butterflies, and off they go all the way south to Mexico. So I'm very happy. I have a couple of long-lived, if they make it, I have a couple of long-lived caterpillars growing
Nice.
larger on my milkweeds.
That's such a good point, Tom. I never could understand the travel pattern of the monarch. And then once I realized that it was multiple generations for them to make the ride up here, do their thing, and make the ride back, Yeah, that's easy 4 generations to make that trip. That's crazy. Very
It's a
interesting.
gorgeous caterpillar too.
Yes.
Well, I noticed that that question came from Leslie Weber, who is with us today. So Leslie, if you want to put something in the chat or chat with Roger privately, if you're interested in getting those milkweed pods, please do.
Yep.
Um,
More than
and
happy to.
And I also just wanted to say to Leslie, one of the things that struck me about her question was to make sure that she's got something native and in bloom straight along the season. You know, it's not just one thing and go. You know, now we might want some New England asters, we might want some ironweed, we might want some goldenrod, along with, you know, the other things to just really make sure that what she's got out there is running the entire season. So that those beneficial pollinators can be there all season.
And you can get pollinator mixes because that may sound difficult to get all of those things that kind of run at different times, but there are seed mixes that create that effect for you very easily.
Yes.
Laura, as a follow-up, I just wanted to ask you, did you plant those autumn olives or were they wild on your land when you took
No,
Stuart?
they're wild. They're wild on my land, and you know, I take out when I can. But I've got 3 bushes that I've had for a long time, and you know, I didn't used to strip them every year until I read in Doug Tallamy's book that the autumn olive was actually not good for the birds to eat because it doesn't have enough fat. It's so much sugar that
Hmm.
it doesn't give them the strength that they need to have for their flight, but they're filling up on it like kids with candy. And so now I strip I strip it all and keep it. But I will say that I've got one bush that is far sweeter than the other 2. And so I do tend to gravitate towards that and maybe taking of one of the less sweet ones out.
Interesting. Not many people are familiar with autumn olive, and I think it's a great underappreciated plant in this area.
Well, underappreciated as long as, you know, it doesn't, you know, run rampant and good for you too. It's got something like 20 times the lycopene of a tomato.
Hmm.
So, you know, good to eat. They say that they're even better after the frost, sweeter after a frost, after but mine have never, the birds wouldn't leave them that long. So I've never tasted one after a frost. Any of you?
Nope.
Anyway, they're marvelous, and they stay in the refrigerator a long time. They're great for eating out of hand if you don't mind a little bit of tartness, a little bit like a not a pomegranate, but along the lines of that.
But it is a highly invasive plant in the Northeast.
Yes.
But you're handling it right because that's the secret of handling. You can still have invasive plants in your landscape, but you have to remove those berries before the birds get to them. Same is true of privet, porcelain berry. If you for some reason you're growing that, any of these ornamentalish vines that are growing in our woods that were imported here because they have pretty berries. If we can get rid of the berries, you can have the plant. But if the berries ripen and the birds eat them, then we're fighting them in the woodlands and in the yards. So autumn olive you see all along the roadsides in Connecticut and Massachusetts. It's really invasive.
Well, that's what they brought it in for, right? For the roads, for the meridians, didn't they?
I don't. I think it's just loves it there. It's disturbed ground, lots of sun.
Yeah.
I think it's just very happy there. But I never heard of anybody using the olives before, so that's pretty cool.
Oh no, they're delicious, and I've not made fruit leather with them before, but I just found a recipe, and I thought, well, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I have a question for you, Tom, if I may. I have some bittersweet on my property that, of course, I am trying to eradicate, but not successfully. I'm very good. Nothing gets to the, you know, the stage where it's red and orange, but sometimes I find them green, the berries green. Can they reproduce while they're still green, or must they?
Nope, they can't.
Okay, thank you.
If you can cut it while they're green, those are sterile. They're not ready to.
Thank you, sir.
They're
I
not
appreciate
they're not
that.
ripe.
Thanks. Well, let's move on. We had a couple of questions pre-submitted, at least one by someone who's in attendance right now, about trimming hydrangeas in the fall. And specifically, she asked about how to trim hydrangeas and lilies in the fall. Does anybody have experience with that?
Well, hydrangeas are tricky, unless you know what kind of hydrangea you have. Some bloom on old wood, some bloom on new wood. So generally, I don't trim hydrangea until mid-spring when you see which stalks have leaves coming out. Sometimes it's easy. The stalk seems dry, but they can still send out leaves, and they're late forming the leaves. So I don't really recommend trimming them in the fall. You're gonna probably lose flowers if you do that.
Well,
Right.
thanks,
And
Tom. Oh,
And,
sorry,
and
go
the
ahead.
same
Lynn.
with, I'm sorry, and the same with the lilacs. I mean, this is not a time of year to trim lilacs if you want flowers next spring. The time to prune the lilacs is right after they bloom, and probably no later than July 4th. But if you were to look at your lilac plants now, you'll see that the little green things that will turn into flowers have already formed. So you can prune, but you won't have flowers.
She had
And
asked
that's a
about
good rule.
lilies,
Oh,
actually.
I'm sorry. I thought she asked about
That's
lilacs.
okay.
My apologies.
That's okay, but that's a useful information about lilacs as well, because knowing that the buds have already formed, they shouldn't be disturbed at this point.
It's a good rule
But
of thumb to always trim or prune your flowering plants directly after they flower. That's the time to do it. Because if you do it at off times, like a spring bloomer, like forsythia or azalea or something like that, you trim in the spring. You don't, if you trim it this time of year, you're going to lose flowers for next year. And anything that blooms late in the year, you can wait till spring. Good, if you know the plant Caryopteris, blue mist shrub that blooms in
Mhm.
August with a beautiful blue flower, that you wait until the spring and you trim that back then. Or beauty berry is also another
Mhm.
one that blooms late. You
Gorgeous.
wait until the spring and then you cut that because the bloom on that shrub was late in the season. So the general rule of thumb, if you're going to prune something, prune it after it flowers.
that's excellent advice and very useful, very succinct.
Yes.
So
And
thank you.
I learned that the berries of the beauty berry can also be made into jam. I haven't done that yet, but I'm looking forward. They're so beautiful though. I might have to leave them a little late.
Well, while we're toting berries, I did make my first aronia berry recipe this year,
Whoa,
And
which turned out really good. Yeah. Well, so everything I've read says to freeze the berries first and use them frozen as if they were fresh, and that
Mhm.
enhances the sweetness, and I did find that to be accurate. Made a Smitten Kitchen recipe for blueberry muffins
Great.
and substituted aronias, and it came out great. So,
Excellent.
good
and
work.
if you've never grown one of those bushes, by the second year, it is just bursting with berries in a way that is almost comical. It's weighing itself down with berries.
The birds love that bush.
It's true. It's true. You know the trick though is plant an elderberry next to it, and they go for the elderberry every time.
Ah, interesting trick. Trick the birds.
Who'd have thunk?
So I mentioned before that Leslie is with us, and she had asked that question about native pollinators. She has a follow-up question for us. She mentioned that both her neighbors next to her use chemical pesticides on their lawns and mosquito Joe treatments, and she wonders could that be an issue with not attracting the monarchs?
Hmm. Don't know about the monarchs, but I'm more concerned about the honeybees.
Bees. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bee, especially the ones that nest in the ground. And we'd have to get some more specific information. What exactly is the chemical? Um, I'd like to know that, but yeah, that could be effect on the honeybees for sure.
It all depends on how responsible these applications are and whether the application is specific to mosquitoes or whether it's broad spectrum and kills other flying insects, in which case that's certainly going to knock down your bee and other pollinator population.
Nope.
Or they could come to my house and she could take some of the bats and have them on her property. The neighbors won't have mosquitoes anymore.
That's for sure. Yep.
True. They make people make bat houses that you can buy and put up on your house.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I have the guano if they'd like, just to sort of No, apparently you're supposed to, so they know to go.
Really? No
Well, that's
kidding.
what my guy says.
I thought you were going to use it as fertilizer. That's good
Yeah.
fertilizer.
That too. I
Great
have
fertilizer.
my plumber likes to trade me for some of my back guano. So yes, absolutely. He loves it for his tomatoes.
That's always good to know
Enough.
something your plumber
You have
wants.
enough bat guano to trade?
Unfortunately, I do.
Wow.
Don't come to my attic anytime soon. Yes,
Wow.
but use it aged. Don't use it fresh.
Oh yeah, everything manure.
Yeah.
That's the rule of thumb. Any manure at least a year old. The bigger the animal, the longer it has to be aged. For sure.
Exactly.
Yep. Thanks. So we've got another question. I'm redoing my Asiatic and Stargazer lilies this fall, and I want to know what plants, annual or perennial, to plant with them to cover the late summer dying foliage. I've done zinnias and marigolds, but in the past, I've done zinnias and marigolds in the past, but I'm looking for other ideas.
So you're looking for a tall annual. A couple come to mind: Cleome or what the hell, Cosmos. Cosmos. They all go. They
Love
go 5 and 6 feet. They'll cover your old foliage pretty well. And there are many varieties and many colors of both of them.
Good thought.
Nice.
Absolutely. I also thought if she wanted to have some fun with it, she could grow some late season peas up the stalks. And that just might be
Sure.
amusing depending on what she wants to do, or maybe even some beans. But your suggestions, Tom, are fabulous.
Are they that tall? I mean, that would be a pea or a bean is going to go 8-10 feet if it gets there.
If it gets there, but it can also double back on itself. And you're going to have
You
a
could grow
frosted
beans on
snowflake.
Roger's sunflower.
That's right. Absolutely.
So we have another question. This one is about a tree. I have a birch tree which is planted very close to a lake, about 2 to 3 feet from the water. Lately, it has been losing leaves and does not look healthy. Could the closeness to the water be detrimental to the tree? And can anything be done to save this birch? I think the last question may be a little too vague, but maybe not.
Anybody got anything on this one?
Well, I'd like to know how big the tree is. I suspect that when it was younger, obviously the root system was smaller. I don't know how deep a birch sends its roots, but certainly the proximity of the water would be a concern in the water table. If those roots are going down deep enough and they're going to get their feet wet, that's not going to be too good for nutrient transport. So possibly this tree is, I don't think see how it can be saved.
Did we hear whether is the water fresh or salt? Did we hear whether it was a lake or a pond or an
It is a
inlet?
lake,
It's a lake. Okay, so it's not salt.
right? Or at least I would assume not.
Yeah, you generally see birches along lakes, but in drier, rocky ground. So I don't know whether it's in a boggy area, whether birch can handle the bogs or not. It's not an area I know much about, though.
Yeah,
All right.
2 or 3 feet. That seems to be right on the lake.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Roger, in that once it got old enough where the roots are now sitting in the water, potentially
Perhaps.
rotting, I
Yeah.
would imagine that's what's happening.
Did the person describe that the tree doesn't look healthy?
Losing its
Well,
leaves.
yeah, they said it's been losing leaves and does not look healthy, but they didn't
Okay,
describe
so
it.
that is what, either lack of nutrients or a pathogen.
All right. Well, thank you for that. We have a question from Fred. He asks, I have irrigation. I fertilize regularly. I apply lime in the fall. I cut the grass twice a week to a height of 2.5 to 3 inches. At the beginning of this year, I started to get small brown spots. A small brown spot. That small brown spot has taken over most of the lawn. No grubs, and the pH is good.
On a year like this with all the rain, that is, and no grubs. Yeah, that's solution A and solution B, and neither of them are accurate.
I always get questions on lawns, and my response is I'm not a lawn guy at all, but since I've had so many questions about lawns, I've started to learn some things about them. And I actually saw this question and I did do a little research. The first thing I wanted to do is look at the affected area. A picture in this case definitely would be worth 1,000 words. There's just not enough information to assign a good diagnosis to it. However, I did come across, I tried to match up the description with what I had found. The problem of circular patches of dead grass. Okay, it seemed to meet the criteria. I wanted to know from the person, how far did it spread? Did this one circle remain a circle and get bigger, or if there are multiple circles? In any event, out of all the possible choices that it could be, I kind of came up with one that was, of all names, it comes up simply as a brown patch, which is a fungus. And it really likes warm, humid areas. And boy, did we have a warm, humid summer with all the rain in July, and we had 4 to 5 heat spells over 90. So it meets the criteria of what the description was, and it is fungal. And it's best treated with a fungicide of copper. Basically, it did have a very specific copper to do it, but it is labor intensive, meaning the treatment 3 or 4 times treatment, or between 7 to 10 day intervals. So you're doing this every week, treating it with a particular fungicide, if this is the correct diagnosis. But the thing that kind of made me think that it was a brown patch was the climate conditions. The conditions were just right for the fungus with this summer. But I think to be more accurate, a picture would really help us identify what this is, and how it progressed throughout the summer.
Sure. Well, Fred is with us in the as a participant, so maybe he'll
good.
chime in on the chat at some point and post a picture with a link, or give us some more information. But in the meantime, we get this question pretty regularly, and we're going to throw it out there anyway, see if anybody's had any other luck or any other thoughts. What are successful methods to eliminate voles, mice, and other mice in garden other than pepper spray, fencing, clean gardens, and traps?
Well, he's got the list covered. One thing
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I did look this up a little bit to see if there was something that he did not cover. And I did find a very specific product, which not even a product, just a castor oil. I never thought of using castor oil, but supposedly mice and moles and voles don't like castor oil. I've used the cayenne pepper, the hot pepper, mixed with the water in the dish soap, and that kind of spray. And then I did see, I don't know if it'd be applicable to mice and voles, but you do find their little holes, is to fill it with sand, because they have a hard time burrowing in the sand. But to me, it's kind of, that's a battle. I mean, if there are a lot of them, they're gonna win. It's a battle. Get a cat.
Yep.
Yeah, and
Well-
keep the house in the garden.
Get a Mauser.
Pretty much. Cat, they do make sulfur bombs for larger animals, but I feel very bad contemplating putting something down a hole like that. So we have another question in a very different vein. What is an effective management plan? In other words, fertilization, insecticide, fungicide spraying for peach trees in South County. Would someone from South County like to start?
Yeah, I have a peach tree too, and it breaks your heart every year because they start out really well, and even if you spray a copper-based fungicide, which is the main issue is brown rot, and the peaches get very close to maturity, and then within a day or two they all rot. A little brown spot starts, and then within a week it's a brown mummy. So what I've always tried to do is as soon as I see a drop or even a tree, a fruit on the tree, I remove it and remove it from the vicinity of the tree. This year, surprisingly enough, despite all the dampness, I actually got some peaches that were edible. Usually I don't, and the fruit load was huge this year. I think I've heard from other fruit growers that it's a tremendous year for fruit in Rhode Island so far. Anyhow, the point being that peach trees are tough, and they're subject to a lot of fungus and insect diseases. And unless you're involved in a spraying program, which can't be organic, and neem oil will work. The fungicide is relatively benign, but to really knock the stuff out, if it's bugs, then you need to use something that's not organic. And the other issue that I've learned of what I've been trying to apply is to cut out as much of the extraneous branches as you can. Just leave 3 or 4 or 5 main branches in the spring, and keep the air circulation in the middle of the tree as open as you can. And get rid of any of this fungus. Sometimes if you miss a few, there'll be mummies that are hanging on the branches over the winter. Try to get up there and get them out of there, because they're all like bombs of fungus for the next generation. So cleanliness is next to godliness on trying to get rid of the bad peaches. I hope that helps.
When I saw the question, I kind of focused on the specific wording that the person put in. What is an effective management plan? So I kind of looked around and I came across University of New Hampshire, their program, similar to ours, but what they have on their website, UNH, they do have a very specific schedule called a fruit tree spray schedule. And they actually give the dates and what type of spray is beneficial. I don't know if it's something that the commercial fruit growers follow, but what I liked about it was very specific as far as what day to do it, or the time, the date range, and then what products, what type of products to use. So this person, Lewis James, I think it is, under University of New Hampshire fruit tree spray schedule. It's pretty self-explanatory.
And the link is in the chat for anyone who's with us live. It looks pretty interesting from the quick glance I was able to give it.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Thank you, both of you. Before we move on, did you have anything to add, Laura?
I am not brave enough to try a peach tree.
It's fair. With Tom's description, it'll break your heart, I feel.
I have enough heartbreaks in the garden as it is.
So on that topic, what worked or didn't work for you this year? What did you go out on a limb with and maybe decide you're not going to do again this year?
Well, I'm gonna try. I haven't done the sunflower. This is the first year I did the sunflowers, and since they were so successful, I'm gonna try them next year. And I think I'm gonna plant some cucumbers near there, just so they can climb up on them. I don't know what I'm gonna do about the bunnies, because I had a major bunny problem. I have had much success with Oregon sugar pea pod too, that type of sugar peas. This year, not a one. Between the bunnies and I don't know what else, they just never grew. So I'm going to persist with them, and I'll go with the old standbys. I've had pretty much luck with them. I'm hot and cold when it goes to the broccoli and the cauliflower, the Romanesco, Brussels sprouts. Never had much luck, so I'm gonna totally give up on them.
Oh, and Roger, if you would check your text messages for photos of the lawn.
Oh, okay.
Perhaps maybe Tom or Laura wants to talk about what successes and failures and experiments they had while you take a look at that.
Where do I look?
It says text messages, so I'm guessing either chat or maybe Francesca actually texted you on on your phone.
Oh,
I think
okay. I'll
the
look.
McNulty's might be going directly to Roger's phone there. So yeah, Roger, if you pull it up, I'll send you my number and my email in the chat if you want to send them there,
Oh,
or
the
you know
chat.
how to
Oh,
share
I
it.
see.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
All right. So, oh, don't wait for me.
Go Laura, go Laura.
So I did quite a bit of winter sowing this year, and had some very nice success with that, and plan to expand my winter sowing. I don't know how much my neighbors will like all my little milk jugs sitting out, but I was really very, very pleased as to how most things came out. There were some that weren't successes, but most were. And I do think that perhaps I will try to expand what I did. I was also really happy with, oh, let's take a look at the lawn. Roger.
Yep.
What are you seeing? What do you think?
Well, it's not a spot, that's for sure.
Well, it's not a spot now. It could have started as a spot though.
Yeah.
Right, it looks
I'm not a long guy. What I'm doing right now, I'm just trying to find a picture that is similar to what that one is and kind of go by that. It does look like looks very much like what this picture described as a lawn damaged by drought. Well, we really didn't have
It's
a
impossible.
drought with
Nope.
that. Certainly inconsistent water, but no, not that.
Well, the question also implied that the lawn had been good in previous years, that this was something new that happened. So it can't be water related, I don't think.
No,
this year.
you're right. You're right, Tom. Okay, here's a picture similar nematode damage. Don't know.
Could be.
No, I would, I do want to address this gentleman's, issue, because certainly he's concerned about it. So I think we ought to hook him up to the hotline, because I know we have a couple of lawn experts at the hotline. I'm not sure what days. This is not my wheelhouse, that's for sure. Although I'm learning more about it. And see, something like this would be educational, for me, just so when it happens again, I would have the answer. But right now I'm still gonna have to figure this one out. So I'd recommend, that he calls one of our lawn people at the hotline. Let's see. In August, September, the grass turns brown in large irregular patches. Grub, well, he said it's not grubs. Okay, so not
They
that.
have a sprinkler system.
Yeah, he said the pH is okay. By that, I guess he's saying it's over 6 and less than 5 and less than 7. I don't know. Gonna leave that up to a lawn expert.
A question from Mary McNulty would be, would the plant clinic be suitable for this?
I don't think so, because we're talking about an area, not one specific branch or plant that you could bring in. I mean, this is a yard. And it'd be valuable to get a little bit more information on the history. What did this yard look like in March? How did it develop through April, May? What happened when the weather started to turn? You know, we really need to get more information to come up with the correct diagnoses.
If it is nematodes, is there a easy way for them to test for that?
Oh boy, I don't know. I tell you, I'm not a lawn guy. I test soil.
Fair enough.
Good.
Well, we'll see what we can do about getting you some more information for the question there. Thank you for asking it, Fred and Mary. And let's go back to Laura. You were in the middle of telling us a bit of the things that worked and didn't work, and what you might plan to do differently next year.
Right. Well, I also have a fenced-in vegetable garden that's getting a little crowded. And for the last year, I'm starting to move some things out that I don't think critters are going to bother. So that there's more room in the vegetable garden and that the vegetables and some fruit really become more of the landscape rather than just here's where we're growing the vegetables and the fruit and the berries. So that, you know, I have some things this fall to shift. And then along with that, just by happenstance, my lawnmower was broken for a few weeks, and I noticed that I had some lovely mullein and some St. John's wort grow in a particular area, and I looked and thought, this might be a good place to put in an herb garden, and so I'm going to consider that over the winter.
Nice. It's nice when the plants tell you where they want to be.
Exactly.
They usually do one way or another, by
Correct.
dying or thriving.
Exactly.
Well, thanks, Laura. I appreciate that. Tom, would you share?
Well, I've been growing vegetables in this one bed for a closed-in vegetable garden for 14 years, and various diseases and problems are starting to pile up. I developed something that I didn't know was affecting, what I didn't know about has been affecting all my brassicas, which are broccoli, cabbage, collards, all that stuff. It's called clubroot. It's a fungus. Like so many of our problems are fungus related. And instead of a nice network of lacy roots, the plant grows this giant, ugly kind of club as a root, and it doesn't do its job by it actually the whatever the system is the system in the plant that moves nutrients and water through the plant gets clogged, just like the root, and they all die. So I've stopped, just like what Laura is saying. I've been growing some of my brassicas in pots outside the garden in clean soil that I've purchased, and I'm having pretty good success. But you know, you can't grow a lot. You know, if you grow one collard plant and a couple of broccoli, because they'll take up a pot. But, so I'm doing the same thing. I moved my tomatoes a few years back for the same reason, and they're out by the street in their own little boxes, and they get good air circulation there. So I'm a fan of that, and I like seeing these food plants in the garden. I mean, the herbs are scattered about too. So I've done the herbs for a long time, but I've been playing around with putting vegetables outside in pots in the garden. I mean, outside the vegetable garden, but in the garden per se. Kind of cool.
Quick callback, Laura, which plants did you move outside your fenced-in garden?
I moved out some raspberries. I moved out the rhubarbs. I've got some high bush cranberries. And for the life of me, I don't know why I did this, but I planted a serviceberry and that's moving out of the garden. That was just me being silly. But I also grow yams and potatoes in grow bags that I've made. And that has been lovely. I mean, you know, to do everything that you need to do to plant to potatoes was just too much. If you could just put them in a bag and let them grow. And I've been very happy with that as well.
Laura, just to comment on the grow bags, I've had similar experience with potatoes. How large are your grow bags?
They're 18 inches across.
Okay, so
How large
wow,
are yours?
so how many gallons would you guess? Just curious.
I'd say it's a cubic foot of soil goes in there.
Oh, okay, all right. Because I had for a while, a number of years, I had 6 15-gallon I'll say canvas. I'm not sure what material it was, but they were grow bags, and I grew potatoes in them, and pretty successfully. The fun thing about it, once the vines die off, you know, they're about half turning brown. I just kicked the bag over, and the potatoes would roll right out. I mean,
Precisely.
pot.
Precisely. And because I made mine myself, I made it with a little place to put my hands so I can feel where they are. Because the first year I dumped them out too early.
Okay.
And so you just do a little overlap, and they sell them commercially like that. That's where I got the idea, and just enough to slip my hand in to check.
Okay, good, good, good. Might try that again next year just because it was fun. It was
It's
a
fun.
novelty. And you could pick it up by the handles and move it around.
You can, well, in theory you can. I
You
found that I had a little bit of trouble with that. But yes, I
Well,
have handles, but you'll have to come move it.
They can get heavy.
Yes.
Tom, you mentioned you moved your tomato plants to the road. Do
Near
you-
the road, near the edge of the property, which is bright sun. And I live on a cul-de-sac, so it's not a busy road. So it's just, it's near the road, so it's catching the heat off the road probably. And it has a 4x4 box. Each tomato has a 4x4 box to grow in.
Nice.
And in that same category, Laura, because I was looking at that box and a little tiny tomato in June, it occurred to me this spring, well, use the boxes. I put radishes, lettuce, onions in those boxes around the periphery, and put the tomato when the tomato was finally ready to go in beginning of June or late May, and I had an early harvest out of the boxes too. So it's an ancillary garden.
No,
Nice.
that's lovely.
Kind of
That's
fun.
lovely.
I have
had a-
radishes. I have radishes growing there again right now.
Excellent. I started a garden in the basement over the winter because I didn't want to go to the I didn't want to go to the store to go buy lettuce and herbs, and that did very well. And in spring, I took most of it outside, but some I did not. And I have cherry tomatoes growing, I kid you not, in plastic shoe boxes
All
that were
right.
just left there, and they're doing beautifully. I mean,
What kind of
I
lighting,
can't believe
Laura?
it grew.
What kind of lighting?
Now it's outside, but over the winter it was was a an LED light.
Oh, no, okay, all right, full
Yeah,
spectrum?
no, it wasn't in the windowsill.
Okay, no, I mean, because there's such a variety of lighting out there. Between your shop lights, your LEDs, your full spectrum LEDs,
Right.
your
It's
T5.
a T5. It's a T5.
Okay, all
Okay.
right. Do you have red,
Uh,
red and blues, or is it full spectrum? Do you know, or how
It's
many?
full spectrum. It's full spectrum. It's full spectrum.
How many
and
T5s in this? Four or eight?
4 or 5 off the top of my
Okay.
head. It's quite a big thing.
It's bright.
Two by
It is
fours,
bright.
yeah.
It's bright, but it's on a timer, and so I'd go down in water, and I thought for sure bugs would get to it, and bugs didn't get to it. And I just made 60 soil blocks today to start it again because it went so well.
Nice.
Why not? Why not? The electricity, best I can tell, costs about $8 a month to run. And I had beans, I had lettuce, I had herbs, I had nasturtiums, I had all sorts of things. And the tomatoes, which are now outside.
Is your basement sealed?
Vaguely.
Barbs.
It's 150-year-old house, so no, it's not sealed.
Okay.
I mean, it's sealed, but it's not.
Yep, I too have a 150-year-old house, so I understand.
Yes.
The walls are permeable.
That would be a very kind way of putting it.
So we're getting towards the end, but we do have a question. And it is, I'm working on pushing out some English ivy and other invasive vines and planting perennials around a small plot of dirt outside my apartment. What recommendations do you have for establishing a boundary for keeping the English ivy, spilling over from the neighborhood property and mulching protecting the new perennials?
A physical fence. When
Yeah.
I have a ground cover that I want to control in a certain area, I fence it in with plastic, not fencing, but in the ground border edging down about 4 to 6 inches. And once you bury it deep enough, you don't even notice it. Like I have bishop's weed, which is a terrible invasive but very pretty ground cover, and I have it in a half circle around a tree out front, but it's entirely enclosed in plastic edging. So if the neighbor's ivy is that aggressive, you're gonna have to put some kind of edging around your bed that you want to keep it from being reinvaded by the ivy. As far
And
as I know, only
depending-
physical barriers will work against an aggressive ground cover like that.
And I would think too, Tom, the deeper, if the person has the ability to do it, the deeper the better. And sure, any barrier is going to work, but I'm thinking the stronger the barrier and the deeper the
Yeah.
barrier is. It's like a subterranean fence. You know, once it's buried, you're not going to see it, but it's going to prevent the roots from going where you don't want them.
Right, and they will go under if it's not deep enough. Absolutely. I think I replaced the Pachysandra once because I only put a 2 or 3 inch border in there, and the Pachysandra found its way underneath it, so I had to pull it all up and put a much deeper one in. So I enjoy ground covers, but I don't want them taking over, so they have to be controlled.
So I know we typically don't offer product suggestions, but we are being asked in the chat for any input on specific products for the edging.
There's lots to choose from. There's flexible stuff that you can put in. It's easy to, if you want to do a curve, the flexible stuff is real good. I generally use for all my edging now, I use a pound-in edging that I usually buy from Gardner Supply in Vermont, but I think it's available elsewhere. And you use a mallet, and it gets all different lengths, 2, 4, 6, 8 inches, depending on your usage. But if you get it in far enough, the lawnmower can run right over the edge, so you don't damage it, and it keeps the grass weeds, everything out of your perennial beds. So that's my product that I have recommended and I have used now for almost a decade.
If something sturdy. I had a remodeling project at my previous house. It was an outdoor porch. It was covered, and the windows, they were screened, but in the wintertime I'd put up plexiglass, and for the winter. And then come spring, I'd take the plexiglass down, and over time it got yellow. It was cracked, so I replaced them. And I had all this plexiglass hanging around. I thought, what could I do with it? Oh, I could make a greenhouse. I could do something. But I ended up putting it along the boundary of a neighbor who tends to let the weeds grow pretty quickly and doesn't cut them down. And that's kind of where I had my vegetable garden go. So I dug a trench, maybe about a foot deep. And the plexiglass, it wasn't as big as a 4x8. It was more of a 3x5. Yeah, it was a 3x5. So I buried it by a foot, and then I had 2 feet above the ground that I just kind of framed. So it looked like an invisible fence, but it did the trick as far as keeping the weeds out from coming into the top of my garden, and I think it provided some barrier a foot below the ground. So that was stuff that was going to end up at the landfill, and I found a second use for it.
Creative.
Yeah, very clever. Thanks for that, Roger. Well, we've come to the end of another radio hour. Thank you, panelists, all of you for joining us. Thank you, attendees, and those tuning in from Facebook Live. If you have any feedback or suggestions, we have a feedback survey, and we pay attention to it. And we're constantly tuning this program based on your feedback and in order to make it the best experience possible for the panelists and the attendees. I hope everybody had as good a time as I did. And again, thank you so much, Roger, Laura, Tom. I really appreciate you all being here. Francesca, you for the assistance in moderating and helping to pull the program together. And I hope everybody has a great month. Look forward to seeing you next month.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. You too.
All right.
Good
Bye.
night.
Night.